come to your very important question of yesterday. Because we're now starting to talk about money. When you've got 1.7 or 11.7 or 111.7 million rand available, actually doesn't matter. You've got to first achieve, and based on your theory of change, is this possible? If you want to create 1,000 jobs, I told you yesterday, on average, it's going to take you R1 million to create a single job. And then you have 1.7 million for that whole portfolio. I can tell you, it's just not possible. It's just, it's an impossible. Nobody can be that ambitious.
Johanna, maybe your opinion or guidance, whatever you want to call it, because the cycles in which CSI teams work, and especially in our situation, where we have to report to a foundation board, you have about a month between hearing what your budget is going to be for the next fiscal and the next board meeting, where you are required to put forward your budget for your projects that you've chosen to work with. That is by no means enough to do all of this work, because the level of engagement that I see is necessary with the program, with the outcomes that you want, even if you have all of these other things up front, your theory of change, your theory of practice. But the level to which you have to engage with each program and all of the partners within each program, a month is nothing to get to that. So how can you push back on that? Because you will have to push back.
And that is why I said I'll come back to the case studies in a moment. Because it's not only your decision making, it's also the whole administrative process. Remember, even if you submit an application, we still got to do due diligence, we still got to have finding, we still got to do a site visit, we still got to like check all your paperwork, we still got to speak to other people. There's a lot of admin. And what I'm finding at the moment, more and more funders are very clear on, we open and we closed. It's to give them that leverage. So this ongoing open environment is just not working. And that's why I wanted to show you the case studies. You've actually got to be very clear on that as well. I just want to close down this section on budgets. Before we decide like how much is available, I want you to consider first per portfolio before you get down to per program. Because there's going to be decisions you've got to make. If you've only got 1.7 million, but you've got 2 focus areas, does it mean 900 for the one and 800 for the other one? Depends on the change you want to facilitate. Not every year both portfolios are going to get, but we think everything's got to be like working out to 100% at the bottom. In our environment, it's not that perfect. So you first got to decide on your spend per portfolio. Then you're going to look at the spend per focus area. Then you're going to look at the spend per program. Then you're going to look at the spend per organization. Because every application, every proposal is going to be different. It's going to depend on the type of intervention, the scale of the intervention, which is why I've got a last column on here. Because at the end of the day, when you're going to do your evaluation, there's 2 tests that you must do: effectiveness and efficiency. Because how will you know that the program works? At what cost? And so what I find, practitioners look at organizations, they look at the total budget. So, okay, it's going to cost us 1.7. So the 0.7 is for salaries and cell phones and water and electricity. So there's 1 million direct program costs. But it's for 20,000 learners. Is that realistic? Because we're really expecting miracles sometimes. So I'm saying to you, the cost to benefit ratio has become very important. So your guidelines for your budgets, doesn't matter how much or how little it is, is focus on per portfolio, per program, per region, whether it's national, whether it's flagship, program-related expenses, operational-related expenses. But what we generally do not budget for is all this other stuff. The M&E, the due diligence, the marketing, the communication, the consultants, the capacity building where you are today. We generally, and this is so ironic, that we hold NGOs accountable for every single cent. But it's like, you know, our cost just disappears into a corporate's costs. You've got to start really, because when it's going to come down to impact, how much did you pay for that impact? Total cost. Because I've got to assess, not only did you achieve it, but at what cost did that impact come? So the point that I want to make here is be very clear on how you're going to split total budget. Because if the NGO, like I told you, the last research they've done in 1999, either you've got to do that research, go and buy that research report, or they have, but you're not even giving them operational expenses. So what's good for the goose must be good for the gander. And so I'm telling you there must be a lot more transparency on budgets.
Can I also just add, in terms of the monitoring and evaluation and impact assessments, have I correctly understood that so we don't do it this way, and that's why, have I correctly understood that we can't use our 1% of net profit after tax to do our monitoring and evaluation? And that's a problem because the company says, hey, we've given you, however, 10 million. Why do you mean you need more money to do something else? And that has been a very big struggle because everything from catering for our employee volunteerism, I can't put that in our SED budget because I'm not showing I've helped anybody else. I'm helping my employees.
So what do you currently, where do you hide that?
Right, so exactly. So it's got to be like a separate budget.
And that is why I'm saying what's good for the goose is what's good for the gander. So if you're expecting your NGO to travel from here to KwaZulu to go and deliver your program, you've got to go and do a site visit, you've got to leave your Sandton office, and you've got to fly to KZN. Why are you hiding this cost, but you're so strict on that cost? So what I'm saying to you, the same argument we have for program versus operational expenses, we've got to have. So if your 1% net profit after tax works out to $1 million, you've got to do the same. Program expenses versus operational expenses.
And that's something we're having to do.
That's compliance and governance. That's transparency. That's accountability and responsibility. You've got to be very clear on it. And I'm really encouraging you, this is a big step, but you're expecting the NGOs to do this anyway. Why doesn't it work this way? And for you, it's going to be, let me tell you, it's going to become so important when you do your impact assessment to really claim, and this is attrition, how can I claim 100 million if it was actually 80 million?
The implication on that with triple BEE, because then they're going to come and verify you and go, hang on, you said you spent 100 million, but you only spent 80 million, and is this actually project related? And I don't know.
So here's my question. How many of you have been audited?
Internal or the
How many of you had company auditors, it doesn't matter who audits, externally generally for listed companies, have been audited? What gets audited? BE certificate? And that's the point that I want to make. Guys, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself, especially with the new BE certification. It's not just, because this is all that we're doing at the moment, is check that the money went to those organizations we said. But we've never been audited. There's a lot of stuff. One of the points that I'm making to you is because if it was audited, they would have said, but you're reporting on 100, it's either 80 or it's 120. Because we're starting to calculate skills, time, products, services. We get better at counting, but what about our own? So I'm saying to you from a governance and a compliance perspective, you better have a ruling on this.
Sorry, not to label the point, but I just want to make sure that I understand. So in our case, for example, it is 100 million that would go to a project. I wish I had that much money, but it is 1 million that goes to a project. Mm-hmm. Whatever else needs to happen, the site visits we need to do, the M&E, the consultants, whatever, that gets paid from a different budget. So what do we then say? Do we say it's 10 million, but the site visits and the M&E and
you actually have to include all of that. Because when it's really going to come to effective and efficiency, if you said you wanted a national project, I can tell you, just because you wanted it doesn't mean it's more effective. Because the costs associated with it is so much what reduces the value and the impact. That's why I'm saying when it's going to come to real proper M&E, you expecting, you look at the total cost that I've paid to this NGO and you say, was it a good investment? Did I get the value? Did I achieve the impact? And then the question is, at what cost? Let me give you, sorry Richard, I'll come back to you. Let me give you an example. No problem. Let's use Oprah. Oprah. 150 girls per year at 150 million rand per year. Yeah. Okay? Every year, there's a place for 150 girls for the Oprah Academy. That costs, total cost, 150 million rand. So how much does it cost per girl? Okay, R1 million. Per year. 100, and that is the, so that's the impact we get. The input costs. What do we get out of it? What does she claim is the change she facilitates? The empowerment of girls. Right? And then she adds like leadership and self-confidence and all sorts of, okay. At a cost of R1 million a girl, your program is aimed at 150,000 kids. At a cost of 15 million, which is the most effective.
Yours. Why? What if the quality is awful?
So, can you see what I'm saying? So money does speak at the end of the day, which is why I'm saying to you, I'm not saying to you whether it's too much or too little. I'm just talking about specifically the application of, if it's that way, it must also go this way. Because at the end of the day, you're going to say, sit back and you say, I had 150 million, I spent 150 million on 150 girls. Your board can very well turn around and say, why didn't we build 150 houses? Which would have had the greatest impact? So on that basis, you've got to justify. And that is the importance of a cost-benefit ratio. Sorry, Richard, did I give you an opportunity to ask a question, or have you forgotten about your question? It's fine, just want to double check. So the point that I want to make here is also, in all of this, our theory of... Yes, okay, no problem, Richard.
I want to say, actually, our auditors told us what we should do is if a project is 10,000, and I do my trips and do everything, whatever, that 2,500, whereas eat, where I sleep, it must be included.
Yes.
So it doesn't show direct cost onto the company.
Yes.
So the project will then be 12,500 under the end of the day.
Thank you so much. That's very valuable for sharing it. I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. I'm just saying to you that time's going to come where you've got, whether you decide the company's going to pay for it, that's fine. Whether you're going to add it as part of your cost based on your auditor's recommendations, that's fine. But you will have to make a decision. Are we going to report on? Think about the Woolworths case that I shared with you yesterday. There was the 3 million cash. But they're claiming 120 million. How did they get to all of that? So there's good news and there's bad news. It's the total expense. No, not all of that was program-related costs. But actually, if you look at, there was a beautiful research report published not so long ago by the GRI, and we will get to standards later on. But it's about this transparency in reporting. It's about totally saying of the 100 million, 20% was program-related cost expenses and management expenses, and 80%. And the 80% was split. 25 education, 25 health. It doesn't matter. But you're asking your NGOs to be that transparent. You've got to be as well.